Mr. Ray.
Hey, Samuel, what's up, man?
What a guan.
I'm good. I feel underdressed now.
Biggie.
What's up, Samuel?
How you feeling, man? Heard you got the corona.
I got COVID 75, man.
Got COVID 75 with no symptoms because you too tough, man.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah, I'm underdressed. I'm here in a t-shirt. I should wear a jacket or something.
Don't worry, we're mixing it up.
Boy, you keep this thing like I feel underdressed. You're on a full suit, huh?
Yeah, you know.
Nah, man.
That's it, man. He always comes with a full suit. It's Saturday, dude.
I know. Definitely feel underdressed in a t-shirt.
Right. We got people trickling in slowly but surely. Let's see. All righty. Okay.
Hussein, how's it going?
Malik, how are you, bro? Yeah, I'm good, man. How's it going?
Going, man. You're
still around, right?
I don't enjoy coming to Gambia, so I had to extend my stay 2 weeks, and then I was supposed to leave last night, but my COVID test came positive, so I have to stay another 2 weeks.
Gambia doesn't want you to leave. You got things to do, people to see.
Yeah, but I hope you're not sick or anything. Is it like asymptomatic?
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, because I even had to go back the next day and test again. Because like, there's no way, because I don't feel anything. But even that one also came positive. I'm like, okay, great.
Yeah. There are a lot of people. I mean, honestly, I think something like 40% of the population have COVID at the moment. But there's a lot of asymptomatic cases as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll pull through, man. We'll pull through. Kunta Kinte. We'll fight it. Wow. Yeah. By the way, I changed the setting of the webinar and had the recording automatically started. Start as soon as we hop on. So I hope everybody's okay with it. Just kind of reiterating that before we get into talking. But yeah.
Well, it's too late now. We already talked about all the
we talked about all the corona.
that's gonna make it on YouTube.
The whole world.
So people will remember that Malik had COVID, many years to come on YouTube.
That's exactly what he wants.
unless I take final cut and cut the video, but I think I'll leave it. It's fine to have a little chit chat while we wait for a couple more people to join. Yeah, and it's the middle of the month, so it should be all right. Lots of people on vacation though, surprisingly. That's
we have I think Mondays off here and also Thursdays off. So it's going to be a week of holidays next week.
Yeah, I mean, if you have Monday off, by the time you catch your rhythm, Thursday's off again. I don't even know if people will come to work on Friday. Some people might call in sick. Hey. Yeah, I know. Public holidays, interesting. Very, very interesting.
I feel like Gambia has an insane amount of public holidays. It feels like, unless it just seems like it's being repeated in the summer. But I feel like almost every month there's a day or two off. So it must be nice, right?
I think it's reduced. During Yahya Jammeh, there were more.
Yeah, during the previous government, there was definitely a lot more. I mean, there was Satseta, like every first Saturday of the month was off, kind of. Well, you're supposed to be out cleaning. I think there's a little bit less now than it used to be. It's still, I would probably guess it to be a bit over above the world average. But yeah, we do have quite a bit of holidays.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I would actually like for you to touch on that based on the conversation of, trying to create and drive a strategic vision under that particular landscape of all these holidays, and then people just love to just take them. And then, like Seren was saying, how do you create a rhythm for somebody to just like come on a Monday and work, but then you have 2 holidays in like the most critical parts of the week.
Right.
So it's just something there that I would love for you to talk about in the context of Gambia, based on, you guys probably have a lot of the employees in the country aside from the government, just how you manage that and what kind of advice you have for us. But that's just something, a bug in your ear to maybe put on your notepad. I would like to hear how you guys address that.
Yeah, I think Sign will take on that question. Managing public holidays.
Yeah, I can help you there.
Yeah. Okay, with 6:05. Let's see. I think we have quite I think it's decent enough. I don't know. What do you guys think? Should we go ahead and start, or
it's up to you?
A couple more people?
I have a hard drop at 1:30.
Yeah.
So it's up to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can just go ahead and get started, so as not to also delay those that are on time. 6 minutes. Yeah, 6 past the hour. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to Open Tech Convo. I am sitting Omar, Lowe, Nicolas. Just call me Omar or Seren. And I am an ITC enterprise coach. And today we have some very lovely people in the audience and the panel. We will be discussing how to drive a strategic vision for your companies. We have Hussein, Diab, Ghanem, and Raymond King, who are both experts and have a vast experience leading companies and teams inside companies. And so, as usual, we will have the panelists introduce themselves and share a little bit of their career or professional path. And then after that, we will open the floor to Q&A as usual, during which the participants may ask questions and the panelists as well. So everybody, let's have a good conversation, and thanks for joining us. So I'll open the floor to Hussein to do his introductions, and then Raymond will do his introductions after that, and it's game time beyond that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Seren, Omar. Thank you so much. My name is Hussein Diab Ghanem. Well, commonly called Sign. Everyone calls me Sign. So for those that don't know how to pronounce it, it's like a sign from above. I like to use that as my line. But anyway, I'm currently holding the position of Chief Executive Officer at Africell Gambia. I graduated from the University of Birmingham sometime around early 2000 and mid 2003. I'm a former Marina School student, as so are many people in this forum. It's nice to see some old faces and some old names I haven't seen in a while. So a little bit of nostalgia going there. I have always been into tech, and I was a bit of a techie since I was young. I was very much into programming and software engineering from a young age. So eventually, I pursued a degree in computer science, actually focusing on artificial intelligence. And after graduating back, I returned to the Gambia in 2003, 2004. I started my own, I initially set up a company called, a business called iLink, which was an IT consultancy firm. And a short time later, about a year later, I was actually, through my consulting work that I was doing, I was hired by Africell, where I joined the company initially as an IT engineer. And over the years, I've been there for about 16 years, almost 16 years now. I rose through the ranks. Big portion of my career was in tech. And I got to be exposed to lots of disciplines, actually. There was, at that time, it wasn't about specialization, actually. It was about having a broad base because, as you know, like Africell was a startup at the time, and it was a startup tech company in a place and in a time where tech was really something like, you know, not taken seriously, I would say, something that wasn't really like a main driver in the economy. So there weren't many specialized people for the kind of jobs that were needed. And I joined initially as an IT engineer with an initial focus on IT support and network support. And over the years, I had to branch off into things like database administration, like wide area network infrastructure. We were part of the people that formed the consortium that set up the ACE cable now, which is providing the whole country internet. And obviously then I naturally had to transition into telecommunications, which was completely not what I studied. But the beauty of coming from a tech background, it actually allows you to venture out into uncharted territory. So I eventually rose from IT engineer, I became IT manager. And then over time, I absorbed another department, which was the billing department, which was mainly related to the systems that bill all the customers and charge all the customers. I eventually became the IT billing manager and then eventually information systems director, which is the department that basically anything that falls under the information processing systems was under my purview. So I occupied such roles for about 10 years until I started to really transition into more of a management role. And I was promoted to be the director of operations. And this meant I also had to see things like the commercial department, and I had to get involved in planning the commercial strategy of the company and implementing that. And then eventually I became the chief operations officer. And late 2000, last year, the former CEO resigned after serving for 18 years, and I resumed the position of chief executive officer of Africell Gambia, which I've been serving since. So less than a year now. I'm a fairly new CEO in the position, but I'm also a veteran in the company. That's it for my career. And a little bit about Africell. A lot of you will know Africell, those that are living in the Gambia. Africell is a part of a group of companies. And it's actually a very inspiring story because Africell is now like a multinational big organization that spans West, East, and Central Africa. And everything started in the Gambia. It started in Gambia. We eventually exported ourselves to Sierra Leone, and then eventually, of course, the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, and Africell acquired Orange in Uganda. And then our latest venture is we've acquired the 4th unified license in Angola. So it really is a Gambian story that is spanning the African continent, and I'm also very proud to be part of that story. So that's a little bit about Africell, and that's a little bit about myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hussein. Lovely story.
Thank you.
Yes, lots of things to poke at. Now we'll certainly let Raymond do his introductions. But yeah, thanks for sharing. Actually, I didn't even know about the, a couple of things you mentioned. So fill in some gaps. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. I have to follow that. So yeah, impressive story, Hussein. I as well did not know a lot of that background. So offline, I'll definitely have questions for you as well. Anyway, yes. So I'm Raymond King. You can call me Ray. The short story about me is I am a builder at heart. For most of my professional career, that building was focused on digital products, so software and digital products that we use on our phones and so on and so forth. However, today, I've kind of transitioned more on the business side. I'm actually right now working on building an organized global sales operations team for the software services company that I work for called Devbridge here in Chicago. A little bit about my background. So I was born and raised in Gambia. I was in Gambia until I was 16, I believe. I grew up in Pipeline M sections to be specific. I attended NOWS for both primary and secondary school. So a lot of my affiliation is with NOWS. I happened to go to Marina for Form 4 and Form 5, where I finally graduated high school in the Gambia. Interesting point about Marina, though, is that is where I was introduced to a computer for the first time. And I believe this was in 1998. And at the time, I remember, I can't remember the name of the teacher, but I remember playing with Fox Pro. And those of you that are my age will know what Fox Pro is, right? A very early database management platform. And that's what kind of got me into this field where I am today, 20 years later. The idea of creating tools and creating digital products that simplified very repeatable tasks became something that was very interesting to me. So fast forward, I was fortunate enough to come to the United States, where I attended university, and I also had a computer science degree, which is a good technical degree to have. However, I realized coming out of college that I had this idea of wanting to build stuff and build stuff for users, but I did not have any sort of business acumen or any sort of business degree. In fact, I graduated university, a 4-year university here in the United States, not knowing how to read a financial statement. So to me, while being technical is great, the idea of being a business person always kind of came into my mind. So I got the opportunity to get an MBA. And I think that experience plus the past 3 or 4 years working in London to build out Devbridge's UK practice has kind of given me the opportunity now to be what I can consider a proper business leader. And that's why I'm on the call today, right? I'm hoping that we can discuss my experience building a practice in the UK and taking it to over $8 million. And also the experience I've had being a technologist at heart to help build digital products and help take products to market. So I'm hoping today our discussions, both science, practical experience in Gambia and my experience doing these different things, both in the UK and here in the US, will be helpful to the audience when it comes to setting strategy.
All right, thank you both for sharing. I'm sure there's a lot of folks that may know you but did not even know a couple of the things about a couple of things you've mentioned. So that's nice that you've shared. Since we already had a question from Malik in the beginning, I'll let Malik's question be the first one, and then I'll ask a question. So we'll let the participants go first, and then I'll come in. Yeah, and if there's any other participant that wants to ask a question, you can either raise your hand in the app, or write your question in the chat. I find that sometimes it's easier for some people to kind of just raise their hands and speak. So if that's you, please feel free. I already see Pons has a question. So okay, so we'll take Malik's question, then Pons's question, and then my question. All righty. So hopefully everybody's ready. We got Muhammad Ali behind behind sign. He's like, I'm ready to be a champion. All right. So yeah. So Malik, the floor is yours. You can re-ask your question, because I'm we had some people that joined afterwards, just so they know what the question is or was. Malik, are you there? Okay, if he stepped away, then we'll go ahead and just have Pons ask his question. Pons, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Hussein and Ray, for these brilliant convo we are having today. I think it's very important for us to look at overall strategies. But I want to center it around people. So I would like to know what do you think are the challenges as a tech person? I have my own perspective as a tech person working in Gambia, with the industry generally in terms of building strategies, especially if you have to deal with graduates from the University of the Gambia, and I've personally refused to lecture there because they don't have a full-time professor. I lecture at Sheikh Anta Diop and the Business University in Bordeaux in Dakar because I just have a master's degree. But I have 3 professors that supervise me. It's always good to have a professor to supervise you, no matter whether you think you're very knowledgeable or not. But we have this situation now. We have graduates coming out from the UTG, and I want to see how you people within your strategies, how will you groom these people in terms of professional development, especially with the attitude we have here, which is part of the culture of laissez-faire attitude, basically, to work. It relates in a way to Malik's question. Thank you.
So if I just understand the question is, can you just repeat the actual question? I didn't quite get the question. The attitude, how do we deal with attitude? I said,
yeah, I'm looking at it in terms of strategic development, especially for young graduates coming out from the UTG. How do you change the attitude to function well within your setup in working in technology? That's basically my question.
Okay, can I take that one? And
sure, you can both have a jab at it if you want. Whoever wants to, okay, speak about it, can go ahead and give it a shot.
Okay, Pons, thanks a lot. That's a very, very valid question, and I think it ties very well into having a strategy. People need to believe that they're part of something. So yes, sometimes the attitude in Gambia can be very lax, and it's a very relaxed environment, and people find any excuse not to come to work, and people find any excuse to leave early. So I think while there's no one-shot solution to the problem, but what I find to be very effective is it actually ties well into having a strategy, right? Because one of the end goals of having a strategy is having a unified vision for the company that it is you're trying to build, and the strategy tells you where you want your company to be in the next 5 years. That vivid picture is what you're trying to build the steps onto achieving that picture. So getting people to be part of the conversation as to where you want to be helps in grooming people to really believe. Like it's human nature, right? If you're doing something without an end goal in sight, it's kind of like random. You're just walking day to day. Like some people say, like even life, the purpose of life is having a life of purpose. So a company is like an organization. It's like a living thing. I actually like to think about it. And if you do not define the purpose of that company and then let people be part of not only knowing what the purpose is, but being a part of defining it, you kind of build a synergy in getting everyone to be part of that bandwagon. So even when they're not at work, they believe that they're part of something. And obviously that's the hard part, because this means that you have to engage everybody. So, depending on how big your organization is, you're going to have to know how you're going to be able to filter that communication family chain around your employees. So getting everybody to be part of the vision that you're building and letting them know what that vision is. I'm not just coming to work every day. I'm not putting blocks. I'm building a cathedral. So you can look at it as just putting blocks down, but when someone knows that I'm putting these blocks down, but eventually it's going to end up to be a huge, beautiful cathedral, they actually feel that they're part of something. And then, especially with young folks, because young folks, they have the long like haul. So whatever strategies you're putting forward, you're putting down, chances are the young people are going to be the ones that are going to live that through. So let them be a part of that strategy and let them know what is the end goal of it all and let them be part of it. I think that helps. It doesn't solve it all, but it definitely helps. And obviously in the process, a byproduct of that is that you end up having a good synergy and communication with you and your team. So that's my take on that particular one. If Ray wants to add on it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, so to be fair, I have never worked in or managed a business in the Gambia, but I do not think this problem is unique to the Gambia. I think the problem of having employees who are motivated is a universal problem. Everything Hussein said, I fundamentally agree with. I think the thing I'm going to add here is, and I'll quote Gary Vaynerchuk. For those of you that follow YouTube, Gary Vaynerchuk is a YouTube influencer now that runs like 3 or 4 major companies. But anyway, the point here is he has a quote, which I'll try to repeat verbatim if I can remember it, which is, your employees should not work as hard as you do. It's not your business. So Pons, I guess my feedback to you is, this to me is a management problem, right? It's not the employee's responsibility to care as much about your business than it is yours. So as you think about how it is that you're going to strategize to get engaged employees, regardless of whether or not they are university graduates or they are 10 years in the workforce, it actually is on you and the company, right? So the stuff that Hussein was saying about engagement, about alignment, and making sure that you're all rowing towards the same direction, those are the kind of tactical things that you need to solve for. But in terms of the problem, my position, I think, is what Hussein was trying to say, is it actually is on the business, it's on the manager to make sure that the employees are motivated and want to come into work and care about the outcome of that work.
Yeah, this is Pierre, guys. Ray, good to see you as always. I know it's we talk all the time. Hussein, it's been a long time. I don't know if you remember, but we used to play video games when we were little. But we'll take that offline, for a later conversation. But wanted to add to what you two said, and I think you guys are spot on. One of the things that I've noticed, in the leadership role that I'm at, is that I think part of the struggle for some businesses and some leaders is helping the employees understand the tick and tie between what they do on a day-to-day basis and how that impacts the long-term strategy of the vision of the company, right? A lot of times the employees don't know what they do and how it impacts the overall vision. They come to work, they work every day, and they go home. But I think it's up to the leaders to help them understand what they do on a day-to-day basis and how that impacts, because then they begin to see the bigger picture, because if not, they're just coming in and clocking out. So I think that synergy is also quite important, and it helps the employees know that what they're doing has a value add, right? And that value add has all these either upstream or downstream impacts, right? So I just wanted to kind of, add that, at least from some of the things that I've seen.
Yeah, and one more thing to add, Pierre, and before we get off this topic, there's a tactical thing you can do here as a manager, right? And this comes with goal setting. Now, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, there was a session on KPIs, which is really good. But there's a framework, which I believe was developed by Google, that we use at Devbridge, and I think you should try at your company, Pons, which is objectives and key results exercise, right? That is a transparent methodology that you can put in place where you set your OKRs, both at the company level, as well as the leadership level and at the individual employee level. And these OKRs are what this exercise is what will make you and your employees, no matter how young or old they are, be aligned with the objectives of the organization. And the key point there is the key results. Everyone's going to have KPIs and metrics and whatever we want to call it that they need to work towards that's meaningful to them. And this is how you could potentially drive engagement through your organization.
Thank you all for sharing. And Hussein, in case you're wondering which Pierre that was, that's Pierre Davis.
I was thinking, yeah.
Like, I'm going to look this up after the call. I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, I live 2 streets from you, Hussein.
Yes, yeah, I remember.
Just to piggyback on what Ray just mentioned, there's a good book that was written by Andy Grove. And so Andy Grove had a tremendous impact on where Google is today. So he helped Sergey and Larry Page get Google to where it is today. And majority of that success has been the introduction of OKRs. So for those on the call who want to get into understanding what OKRs are, read Andy Grove's book on Google.
Thank you, Pierre. Appreciate it as usual. Malik, are you back on the call? Okay, I guess he's still not back. So I guess I'll go ahead and ask a question. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, if there's anyone in the audience that wants to ask a question, feel free to just raise your hand or type something in the chat box. We had one comment so far from Mokhtar Jallo. He says, "Team Gary V." So yeah, 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 I can attest that he loves Gary V. Yeah, he's mentioned it a few times that I've met him. But anyway, yeah. So my question to both the panelists. We have people in the audience and people that might be, watching the video later on YouTube. So my question would be, what methods did you use to create your strategic vision, and what are some of the, techniques or some of the tools that you use to help you drive your vision? So, and that I'd open that to anyone that wants to take a jab.
You want to take it, Sign, or you want me to go?
Yeah, okay, sure. Thanks, Serene. Okay, so what I try to do is I try to every year before the end of the year we come up with our budget for the next year, and of course, your financial budget is kind of a condensed. It entails so much more than just a budget. So one of the exercises that we actually put into building that budget is we do like a self-assessment, right? And in that self-assessment, a key thing we look at is we do a SWOT analysis, and we try to look at our strengths, our weaknesses, and threats. And I think doing that, we do it as a whole management together, and it actually helps us to see ourselves from a third perspective. And in doing that, it helps you to immediately get a short-term goal for what you want to do the next year. But then again, that also helps you see how that ties up in your larger vision. So that's something that we do every year before we prepare our budget. And it's a management initiative, like it's mainly management, but obviously each of the department heads would need to aggregate everything from the units that come down below them. And all of this also ties into what are we trying to achieve for the next coming year. Obviously that has got a financial implication, a technical implication, a commercial implication. And it's something that I find very effective in helping us define the immediate short term and then seeing if that ties well into the long term. I don't know, Ray, if you want to add anything on top of that.
Yeah, no, I think again, you're spot on with the answer. I think, Sering, I want to just take a step back and actually define strategy, right? Because I think, like you mentioned, we're going to have people that watch this. And it may be a good idea just to kind of talk about exactly what strategy is and the relationship between strategy and vision. Because I feel like today, and in some discussions I've been in since being in the Gambia, those two words get used interchangeably. And I don't think that's the case. So for example, I think one of the biggest mistakes or misconceptions, or even like missed opportunities that a lot of people early in their career, and especially people I've spoken to in Gambia, they seem to think of strategy as this. There's background noise.
Don't worry, I'll mute that.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, they seem to think that strategy is this theoretical thing that only the CEO, the leadership team, does behind closed room, and like Sam was just saying, to set the budget. The thing though is that everyone can be strategic. Everyone can apply strategy actually throughout their whole life, right? So for example, take a personal example, like, you're playing Ludo or Crazy Age, right? There is some sort of like game theory in there. That's strategy, right? If you're developing your personal brand, your small company, or even on social media, right, trying to build your brand on there, there's also a strategy to that. So to me, strategy is like a universal way to think about problems, to think about goals, and to think about, what you want to achieve and how to best position yourself, your company, your product to approaching and making progress towards those goals. So my point here being, like, if you think of vision, right? Vision is your view of the future. Vision is your long-term aim that you're trying to achieve. Strategy is the plan of action that is meant to achieve that vision, right? So I wanted to just make sure we backed up and understood that technically strategy and vision are not the same thing. And that it makes sense as a business to have a vision, to set a budget, to be profitable, to be the best, telecom company in Africa, to do, all of these things. Those are visions, right? And, for example, that's the wish, think of it, right? And the strategy is effectively how you're going to implement to achieve that vision. I believe there's a saying, a goal without a plan is just a wish, right? It's the same thing, right? A vision without a strategy is just a wish. So anyway, I want to give that context. To answer your question, though, I know I'm rambling a little bit, but hopefully this is helpful. To answer your question a bit, I mean, when thinking about strategy, there are roughly 4 to 6 building blocks that you need to consider. And these are, depending on where you are, I'm sure the management consulting folks maybe have like 8-point quadrants for this, but for the most part, there are roughly 4 to 6 building blocks. And effectively, what you're trying to do is you're trying to, one, narrow down the problem you're trying to solve, right? Narrow down the hypothesis as it relates to your vision. That's the first thing you're trying to do. You want to be intentional about what specific objectives are out there for you to meet your vision. So we talked about KPIs, we talked about OKRs, right? You want to be intentional about setting those things. So sign in your example, right? Your problem you're trying to solve for is how do you build and maintain a running budget for the upcoming fiscal year, right? Be intentional about the objective, and then you do the tactical and incremental steps that you need to meet each of these objectives. So those are the first 3 things of every strategic planning you do. Narrow the problem, be intentional about your objectives, and design tactical steps on how to do that. After that, the remaining 3 are build, measure, learn, right? Execute, iterate, refine, right? Try to make sure that you are repeating a set of small incremental steps that you learn from on a period-to-period basis to implement their strategy. Does that make sense, or should I give an example?
Yeah, I think everybody's following. But yeah, go ahead and give an example. It always, like I said, it always helps to bring it in context.
Okay. Let's use an example of, let's say the vision. I have a vision that's like, I want to be the leading voice for technology development in the Gambia, right? And I identify that, that's my vision, to be the leading voice of technology development in the Gambia. Great. I come up with one of the problems, right? One of the problems related to this vision is that many people in the Gambia don't have enough awareness of the brain power, the skill set, the people in technology that are both within the country and like us here in the diaspora, right? So that's the problem of my vision. So I go through an exercise, like a whole OKR exercise, and I set an objective that says, I want to raise awareness of tech voices in the Gambia, right? So that's my objective. And the way I measure my key result is saying that I'm going to complete 48 video podcasts with at least 20 unique guests in a year. So if I complete 48 video podcasts and do 20 unique guests in 1 year, right, I would then meet my objective of increasing awareness. Because you're seeing we're slowly building the strategy, right? So now I have my vision, I have my objective, now I need to have a plan. Now, one of the plans of this strategy could be, I'm gonna do a weekly panel discussion with my friends and classmates from high school who currently work in the technology space. That's my strategy. If I do that, that would help me hit my objectives, my key results, which would help me work towards my vision. Tactically, what does that mean? I need to reach out to 5 friends a week to pitch this idea. And then tactically, I need to make sure that when I reconnect with friends from week to week, I'm evolving how I message. I'm evolving how I ask. I'm evolving the pitch. And then week to week to week, I'm gonna get these 48 come through. And that's basically the process. That's basically how we do strategy. That's basically, I'm sure, how Hussein, you guys do it, where you kind of set these gates and go through the process over and over and over again. And by the way, the example I just thought of was Sarah, what you're doing right now with Open Tech Convo, by the way.
Yeah.
Good one.
Yeah, I was just I grasped it.
Hey, Ray, quick question before I forget. First of all, thank you for answering my question that I was going to ask. So that's great. Can you maybe just help? Because like you said, people throw those words very loosely, right? Maybe share maybe just some quick tips on how businesses can, I would say, stress test. I'll use the word that, yeah, how businesses can stress test their strategy, right? Because oftentimes there's this misconception that people think that when you start a company or you start an initiative, you build your strategy or you define it, you leave it alone. It's a one and done thing. And that, I'm sure you and Hussein know this very, very well, that that's not the case, right? You have to constantly revisit strategy and constantly adjust. So maybe, can you share maybe 1 or 2 things that you've seen in your world on ways that you've pressure tested your strategy, depending on what you were doing?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think the key there is measure, measure, and measure again. That's having that framework in place, a framework to be able to kind of set a waypoint along your journey and set sections where you can actually measure. That's the key thing we do. So keeping with the example of budgeting, if our vision is to run profitable, we have quarterly check-ins, quarterly updates where we release our numbers and so on and so forth. So that's the first bit. In terms of stress testing, I imagine you're referring to where do you lean on effectively to kind of see where things fall apart. Right. I imagine that's what you're asking for, right?
Yep.
Okay. There's various ways of doing this. I mean, most recently, we haven't had to do this exercise at my organization. But if I was to think about it, we look at, for example, yes. So for example, for us, utilization is a big measure of in our business, right? How utilized are our resources so that we can be able to kind of go back and forth. So when it comes to stress testing, one of the things that we always play around with is that utilization number. Do we overhire, underhire? Do we sell work that we don't have people to fill and so on and so forth? We play with those levers, Pierre, to kind of help us know whether our strategy for hiring or our strategy for business development is working. But really, it comes back to the metrics that we set. And then we attempt to, play with, messing with those metrics from a quarter-to-quarter basis to see if we are properly, if we have the right infrastructure in place to kind of support us when these things go through. But to be honest with you, we've not done that for the past 3 or 4 quarters because, this is little thing going on right now with COVID. And we've been kind of focusing on surviving as a business for that.
Got it. No, it totally makes sense.
Just to add, maybe I'll just add a little bit on what Ray said, and I'll just back a little bit up and not talk specifically about the strategies itself, but I'm talking about your strategic vision, which is what you'll eventually use to define your strategy goals and then try to tackle them one by one. But basically, there are a few components that you need to have when you define this. You need to have your strategic vision. And firstly, it needs to be future oriented, right? It needs to be something that is where is this going to set you up in the future? It needs to be inspiring and challenging. You don't want to have a vision, a strategic vision that is just boring and no one really cares about it. So that's another component you need to have there, right? It needs to motivate your staff, and in motivating them, they'll remember it. So it needs to have that as well. I said earlier when I spoke, it needs to have a purpose. It needs to be purpose driven. So you need to also have that as well. So when you have these components in your strategic vision that you've defined, there's several criteria you can use to test whether you've actually succeeded in putting up this vision. And there's first of all, is it short enough? Like, are you writing like a whole book? Like, as we had a conversation the other day, myself and Sitting, where you walk into so many offices in the Gambia and they have a strategy vision, which like is from the top of the roof, the ceiling down. Is it short enough? So it needs to be short. Okay. It needs to be believable as well. So this is like what you're putting down. Like, are you really just rambling? Is it something that you can achieve? It needs to be believable. And of course, it needs to be achievable. And then lastly, it needs to be relevant for today and for the business that is you're trying to run. So those are some of the criteria you can use to like kind of stress test your vision that you've defined earlier. I'm not sure if it makes sense.
It makes perfect sense, guys. Fantastic answers. And I think it's spot on. And hopefully, folks on the call, we're capturing some of those as well. I think it's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Pons says, good one, Ray. Thumbs up. And
thank you for that.
Yeah. But thank you both. Really, really very insightful nuggets. Do appreciate that a great lot. All right. So is there any question from the participants? Are there any questions? If not, I'm going to go ahead and ask because I don't see any hands as of yet. So I'll just go ahead and ask a question. Have you faced any challenges running your current vision or your current strategy? And also a separate question or a sub question, is your strategy the same as or let's just say, did you have to set a new strategic vision for either your company or for your department, or did you have to set it under a bigger strategy, or let's just say under a bigger vision, right? So I don't know if I'm making myself clear there. Okay. Because
I understand the first half of the question. The second half is really confused. The first half I understand. The second half.
Okay, first half is just challenges, but the second half is normally if you're in a well-established company, you find that they have a long-term vision, which sometimes could be beyond 10 years. But as an executive, when you come in, if you're, for example, a CEO or even an executive, it just depends on the company, basically. But normally, if you take on a leadership role, there are roles where you're required to also develop your own strategic plan to drive towards the bigger strategy. So my question was, in your current roles or through your career, have you experienced this? And I don't want to mention challenges again, but again, that could be what were the pluses and minuses of that, And then after that, we'll have Malik ask a question. So his hand's raised, but hopefully that's understood.
Yeah, I get it. I think the first question, have you faced challenges? Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the job, right? That's why we get paid the big bucks. No, but that's the job. We're supposed to address business challenges and put in place, strategic objectives to solve those challenges. Specifically, as it relates to alignment with the organization, I think that's the question that you're asking, right? Is my strategy typically the same as my leadership's or organization? I think, yes. I mean, the whole OKR concept comes back, right? So we are an OKR-based organization. So we do the best that we can to make sure that we're all lined up towards the same vision and that all of our strategies are aligned. I think where it falls apart is when, I think Simon was saying, like when these strategic objectives become, 5 pages long, right? And then all of a sudden, like it's difficult to be aligned. So in examples at my previous company before joining Devbridge, that was the major challenge. You will get effectively a pamphlet, that will define the strategy and the vision and so on and so forth. And being able to peel apart what you were supposed to do out of that, that was a challenge. The other challenge was also when I was in middle management, not having buy-in or not having autonomy to actually implement a strategy to solve the problem. So now that I'm a leader, one of the things I do, for example, is I set my vision and I set my 3 or 4 objectives that I need to do. However, I give my team autonomy and I give them some rope to make sure that they can kind of develop their own either tactical strategies or their own strategic, more nuanced strategic objectives to achieve my goals for them. Because in my past, that was a challenge, right? Having strategy beat down on you from the top down doesn't always work. Because unfortunately, unless you're on the ground, like twisting cables or writing code, there are just certain things that you don't know. And as an employee, that's a challenge that you could have. So I hope I answered your question, but that's what I've seen in my past, at least.
Yes, Ray, thanks a lot. Actually, that makes perfect sense. I'm just going to probably touch more on the second part of the question, but also a bit add onto the first. And I'm going to try to be specific for the Gambian experience. The challenges, of course, as Ray said, like if there are no challenges, then everything is pointless, right? For Gambia, my experience is that no one, like, to be honest with you, we learn on the job. Like tech, telecommunications, like ICT is still fairly new in the Gambia. Like, okay, yes, I've been in the industry now, I'd say for almost 20 years, but a lot of things had to be built from scratch. Like there was nothing, there was practically no infrastructure. So even defining your strategy becomes challenging because where we are today, the landscape completely changes the next year. So your strategies are almost all over the place. So yes, that's one of the biggest challenges was being at a green field. I call it green field where you have to build everything from scratch. But I mean, definitely the industry is maturing now, and some of those challenges are less felt now than they were a few years ago. Touching on the second part of your question, yes, like Africell, as an example, we are part of a group of companies, Gambia being a subsidiary. So yes, there is an overall company group strategy, which is normal, right? But then again, each operation on its own has got something which is more specific to their experience and their strategy. So not only do we have to have our local strategies, but which is actually for our personal experience, that's the hard part, and that's the bulk of the work we need to do. But we also have to make sure that that kind of ties in to the group strategy. Are we being more in doing your local strategy? Are you fulfilling the group strategy of being more eco-friendly? Are you incorporating more sustainable development goals into your business? So yes, there is that group umbrella, but then it plays a part in what you do locally, globally and locally. So I guess I don't know if that answers the second question for you.
Thank you both. Thank you both. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And thanks for adding some extra too. So yes, you both touched on both questions beautifully. We had Malik raise his hand, but while discussing, the hand went down. So I'm thinking probably some answers came out and took care of that hand. Oh, he's back. He's like, no. Okay, Malik, since you had your hand raised before Pons took it down and came back again, I will let you ask your question, and then we'll come to Pons. Malik, the floor is yours.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks. And I think Hussein kind of addressed part of that when he was talking about lack of the infrastructure, where they had to change. So my question was more around, it has to be more, maybe it's more directed to Hussein because it's more Gambia related. When you ran into those issues and challenges, you built your strategy, your vision, and all those things, but there are underlying blockages happening that's kind of preventing you from executing properly. Like, what kind of advice would you give a company that kind of depends on maybe those underlying infrastructural things that are required, but it's just not there? I know in your case, you guys, have a lot of resources where you're able to build some of these things, for you. Or maybe in our case, maybe there's some things where it's policy. Maybe government has certain policies that doesn't allow certain things to happen. So I'm just more looking for maybe advice or your input on, what are ways that, you would advise somebody to kind of handle some of those while still moving forward with some of their goals and vision. How to mitigate the terrain, especially in Gambia, because I feel like there's so much to be done still. Although I believe companies like Africell, you've kind of laid the ground and kind of helped in building out that infrastructure and allowing others to be able to kind of tap into that. But there's still a lot of work to be done. There's still a lot of underlying issues that a company coming in with a strategic vision for their business, like for 3 years, we can't move. There's certain things we want to do, we just can't. We're just like at a standstill. So like, what's your input? What's your advice on how do you pivot, or how has Africell handled some of these situations where it's part of your growth plan or part of your vision, but you haven't been able to execute on it? So what were some of the tactics and tips that you've implemented within the organization to kind of just help you keep moving forward towards that vision? It's a long question, sorry, but you kind of, I think you understand what I'm trying to say.
Thanks, Malik. Thanks. I kind of get it. I get the question, and it's a very valid question. And it's not a one-stop shop solution, but I'll just try to just in no necessarily order of importance, just try to tell you what I think. First of all, I think that you don't have to, obviously giving up should never be an option, right? We've had this conversation, Malik, before. It's difficult sometimes doing certain things because, again, it's still quite virgin and it's still quite new, and there's still so many things so many other systems that need to be in place that your system depends on. So the first rule of thumb is you shouldn't give up, okay? You need to keep forging forwards. And from my experience is Gambia has actually quite an impressive private sector, and you have some of these private sector companies that are actually doing great things. How do you get government, or maybe not necessarily government, but how do you get these other peripheral things that could be like making things difficult for you? I think awareness and alliances. I'm just talking awareness and alliances, right? And what do I mean by this is that what you think and what you're trying to achieve might be so important, but sometimes the systems around don't even yet aren't up to speed to seeing how important that thing is. So creating an awareness on what it is you're trying to do and how important that is, and obviously by making a lot of noise and doing these kind of forums and going online, and you can only for us Africell, we are big and everybody knows us, and it's very easy for us to try to drive forward an agenda, because we can easily get the attention of whoever it is that needs this attention. But for smaller players in the market, if you identify what it is you're trying to do and then ally yourself with people, set up consortiums and alliances with people that have a similar thing that they're trying to achieve, and then go at it together, it actually produces results. In my experience, I've done that in the past. I've actually allied myself with the competitors and then had to, wanting to get something going forward. And specifically to our industry, instead of going first directly to government, for example, we engage the regulator a lot. So the regulator in the Gambia is actually fairly effective if you know, if you target, if you are very specific in how it is you want to get your things done. So, and they are somehow autonomous to like central government. So if you can ally yourself properly with other players in the market that are trying to achieve the same things, and you make your case forward to the regulator and get them really on board, they can actually help this drive certain, if it's a policy change you're trying to effect, or they can actually help things go up the chain. So I don't know if this is like specific to the kinds of problems you're talking about, but I'm just telling you, I'm giving you one aspect of how we are able to sometimes effect changes and awareness within the system.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Hussein. I think Pons has something to add and also a question. Pons, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Basically, it's a question for Hussein. I want to look at rural strategy. Do you have any rural-based strategy, especially, I mean, because you're the biggest telco, and we are talking of universal access, and I like when you mention stuff about the SDGs, how your company looks at it at a broader level. And we all know that, like this, our national development plan, which I think if this government still continue or whatever, it's going to be extended. Something else will come about building this digital economy. But there are some parts in the country that are really being shortchanged on connectivity. And personally, I think it's only Africell that can solve it, because the government, the Pura will tell you, they will say they have a universal access policy. So I just wanted to know whether you have a rural strategy that people in rural areas, they'll have the same opportunity on getting connected. If I go on Trek, I won't have any problem, whether I'm in Koina or somewhere in Jawara, to connect. What do you what's your company doing about that, basically? Yeah.
That's a very, that's an extremely valid question, and it's something that is in the core of our strategy. 2021, 2020, and going forwards. Very, very good question. Universal access is one of the things that government and even the regulator are trying to encourage. And I'll also tell you something which is very interesting about the Gambia, and it's Gambia is a very interesting place, okay? And in what context? And I've had this conversation with Malik before. He came to my office and we were discussing this, and I'm just going to tell you from my Africell experience. Put it this way, like Africell Gambia is the smallest operation in the Africell group, right? But we actually pump more data in relation to population size than any other company in the group. So that tells you a lot. That tells you a lot, actually. And I've seen firsthand how this is possible. In 2011 or about 2012, when Africell launched our strategy of trying to get like every Gambian at least connected on 2G all throughout the Gambia. We paid visits, like every year we do a management tour, right? I literally visit almost every single village in the country. And I remember, I think it was 2011 or 12, don't quote me, but we were going to pinpoint and doing our studies where we're going to put up these cell sites. And I'm telling you, in the most remote of places, because now we're trying to transition from voice to data. So we were trying to decide where we're going to put our cell sites. And we were initially skeptical because we were new in the data game. Like Africell started off as a voice company and then eventually transitioned into data. And I remember standing on a hill in Garawal. Like Garawal is it's like after Basse. I don't know some of you if you know your Gambian geography. And we were having a management decision, like to put a site or not to put a site, like to put a cell tower, you're talking about a place like literally in the middle of nowhere. And we were like, guys, come on, like really, like, it doesn't really make sense. Like, it doesn't even make economic sense to have, no one's going to use this. Anyway, we tossed a coin, and because we had a limited budget at the time, and it was one of the, we didn't literally toss a coin, but we decided to put up a cell site in Garawa. And lo and behold, like 5-6 months down the line, the readings are the readings are off the chart. Like people are pumping so much data in Garawa, we had to upgrade and upgrade and upgrade. And this story persists all throughout our rural area expansion story. And I've been trying to understand that over the years. And it's and all of you will identify with this, is every Gambian wants to be connected to a relative abroad. The Gambian diaspora is so big that even people that are not educated nowadays want to use WhatsApp. Like 4 years ago, my helper in the house came to me and told me, "Can you help me set up WhatsApp on my phone?" And I took it and I started setting it up, and then I just realized you can't read, right? And so then he told me, "Yes, but I can talk. So Gambia has got a huge diaspora, and the rural areas are definitely not an exception. And we have seen this now, and we are on a rapid expansion project in the upcountry, in the rural villages. Of course, there are huge challenges there because, yes, as much as I want to give everyone internet connection, but I want to go and connect a village in the middle of nowhere with no electricity, no roads, and 500 people. So how do I, as a company that you still have to run at a profit in order to make these things work, how do I justify putting covering every rural Gambia? And one of the things Africell has been doing is and this also ties well into our sustainable development goals, is we were actually the second or third country in Africa to start deploying in 2020 what's called the rural star smart site, and these are cell sites that run completely on solar. They can run 48 hours on solar. They can cover about 2 kilometer radius, and you can deploy them in no time. So we actually launched like 20 of those in the upcountry, and we've been learning a lot from that, because these sites give us a chance to go out quickly, put up cell towers, gather information, see which place we will eventually need to migrate into a fully blown cell tower. So it's a very valid and sensitive and even an emotional question, and we are not neglecting the rural areas. And almost 60% of our expansion budget, for example, for 2021, 2022 is for the rural areas, because that's where the gap is. People underestimate it, but everyone wants to be connected and everyone wants to use data, and we can see it in the numbers. So I'm not sure, I might have rambled a little bit because it's a very good question, but that's what I have to say about that.
No. Thank you for that, because I'm trying to set up community network centers in rural areas. I'm trying to roll out a digital inclusion program for women so that they will be able to get into e-commerce, and it also links with your Africell money and everything. And I'm trying to start from the Lower River region in Masakonko. And it's been a problem. I've done tests with your Africell something. It's the best, but it's still not good enough. Even the last mile to get it up to the hill there in Masakonko, it's very difficult. And I'm asking myself that, okay, if I'm going to set up a community network center, which is the best model to get rural folks to be connected at a cheap cost, and I'm going to run everything by solar, and the only network that I can really get something on, it's Africell. Gamtel, they seem to be lost in what they are doing, and the other ones I don't even want to mention. So that's why I put this question to you, because there are a lot of folks, and I'm sure if I haven't asked Ray, most folks in the diaspora are thinking of doing things. I mean, I always tell people, Gambia doesn't stop in Brikama. We have, even with the rural-urban migration now and everything, we still have 48% of the population living in rural areas. I went to Gambisara the other day, and I just tried to do a test with your MIFI. You can see the amount of people that were connecting. I opened it up, so it just shows. And I went to Elumo. I went to Elumo in Brikama. The same thing. All this I did last year in the pandemic, before things were serious. So I think it's something that I know is difficult. You have the economic benefit, but I think it's a big. I mean, you're young, you're dynamic. I mean, you are someone that within the sector, you know what it takes. So I'll say that I'll like to see you do something. If you even have to experiment and say, okay, let's start with LRR and see what happens. Okay, we'll take an example. In this election period, a lot of people you have, I know, like the EU are sending a massive delegation here for election monitoring. all these folks, you don't want them to use satellite phones to be when they're doing on-the-spot counting. You want them to be able to say, okay, we are using your network to transmit this data from point A to point B. So I don't know. I mean, what you said is valid, you know, and for the economic dynamics, I know sometimes it's difficult, but I just think that your company is the only one, because of if you check, I mean, I've done that test. Your company is the only one really doing something. All the other ones, they're just making noise. And even with the national broadband network, it still sucks. And we have a national broadband network, and people shouldn't be suffering. You know, Sharing does a lot of this mentoring thing. If he wants to mentor someone in some remote village, some kid, when we see the WASC result will come out, you check the WASC result coming out or and stuff. We saw the Cambridge. Everybody is doing well in the Cambridge because those are about kids that can afford it. They go to the good schools. But check the WASC result. If you do the cumulative analysis, most of the people that fail are from upcountry. And if they have internet, it makes a big difference. Thank you very much. I really liked what you said. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Paul.
Just to touch, sorry, I don't want to drag this on because, as I said, this is a big part of our strategy. But I'm just going to touch on the specific places that you mentioned. Okay, you mentioned Gambisara, right? Gambisara, like, first of all, you have to, like Gambia, the rural population, the rural areas have got population that are fucking, so you know it's not like in GBA, for example, in Brikama, right? I put up a cell tower here, everybody is here. I will put up a cell tower and I'm going to cover 100,000 people in one shot. In the rural areas, you know, it's sparse and it's far between. So it's not that they are forgotten, but it's a catch-up game that we're trying to play. And because we're catching up, because now when it comes to voice, initially it was voice, right? Most places you go to, you can definitely make a voice call, but nowadays nobody cares about it. So imagine over the years spending so much money upgrading on voice, and now it's all about data. So Gambisara is an interesting one, because Gambisara actually has got 3G in Gambisara, but as you said, its capacity right now needs to be upgraded because everybody wants to be connected. But how do we mitigate that next to another place which is not even connected yet? So we're trying to do several things at the same time, right? Giving some places that don't have, upgrading places that do have, factoring into where we have roads, where we have electricity. So it's not going to be, I would love for this to be done in the next 1 or 2 years, but I'm going to be very frank with you. It's going to take a couple of years at least before we can say that every single Gambian will have access to minimum 3G. But I can assure you it's on our agenda, not only because I want to be the good Samaritan and give people in the upcountry data, but it actually benefits us too as an organization. So rest assured, we're going to do everything in our power to make sure this is done within the next 2 years maximum.
Thank you, Hussein. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And we have Pasering. Pasering, you wanted to ask or comment? And we have Malik as well waiting.
Yeah, thank you, Hussein. Very, very interesting conversation. Good to see my former classmate, Raymond Kane. And I really appreciated how he kind of took the time to differentiate between strategy and vision. I think that's one of the best hardcore differentiations that I've heard so far. And I came into the call right in the middle of when Raymond was talking about his transition from a technical person to what he is today. And I would have loved to hear more about that, but I think I will how to pass on that, for another time. So my question is, from a personal finance standpoint, I mean, we've seen what has happened in the past couple of months or probably a year or so now with the COVID. From a strategic standpoint, with your respective companies, how has some of these personal finance things like emergency funds, living within your means, and all of these kind of things, how has that played out in your respective businesses, in terms of your strategic planning and stuff? I'm not sure if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. And Pastor, yeah, I mean, I'll be more than happy to chat with you offline about the transition. I would love to make it sound exciting, but it really isn't. But yes, we should definitely connect. I'll drop my email in the chat, just so we have that and we can talk about that. To answer your question about personal emergency funds, I want to make sure I understand the question, so I'll repeat it. Are you asking more about personally what I did to make sure that I was financially okay during the pandemic, or what we as an organization did to make sure that we would be financially safe during the pandemic? Which one was it?
I actually mean the organization. We do have like these personal finance things that we apply in our daily lives, but as an organization to have realized that they kind of seem to, operate the same way just as any person will operate when it comes to their budget and, their finances and that kind of stuff. So my question was from the organizational standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak for Devbridge because that's what I know. And, for context, we are in the US, we are a Western company. So there's different opportunities that we have that may not be in Gambia. So Hussein, please talk about Gambia specifically. So as a business, we've always been, we've never taken a penny of funding. The whole idea behind Devbridge has been, how do we grow based on our revenue, based on our client services, right? And so as part of that, we have a whole bunch of models that we have in place that make sure that we have enough, money in the bank, for lack of better words, that will take us through the tough times. But as I was mentioning earlier to Pierre's question about stress testing. So one of the things that we always kind of pay attention to, which again, we didn't do a lot in the past, we pay attention to our utilization, which is how many people we have in the bench, right? And again, this is getting very specific, I realize, but the idea is we pay attention to certain KPIs, certain metrics of our business that show us what would happen going forward, right? So that paying attention for that and getting really good at it over the past 12 years, that positioned us very well when the pandemic came. But I think really the silver bullet for us for the pandemic was we were already a remote first delivery organization, right? So when everyone had to go home and work from home, for example, or everyone had to work less hours or do certain things, our bottom line was not impacted too much because we were already structured as a business to kind of like, work through those problems or operate in that specific manner. So I like to say that we had this really smart idea that we did last March, but I think for us, it's been a accumulation of just how we run the business and how we approach our business, good times and bad, that has helped us survive this whole thing. Last point though is, at least in the West, and I'm not sure if it's available in the Gambia side, but I know, for example, the first thing our CFO did when we heard about COVID was we confirmed our line of credit with our bank, right? Now, thankfully, we haven't had to use it, but the first thing we did was we confirmed that we still had all that money in the bank in case we needed it. So that gave us the extra layer of security. But outside of that, thankfully, touch wood, we never had to use it. But outside of that is the things I mentioned earlier that got us to this point.
Okay, Hussein, you want to add anything to that, or we move to Malik?
I can just maybe add a couple. Thanks a lot, Ray. Makes perfect sense. For us, we didn't really get, any funding from outside. Well, apart from and that's pre-COVID. Like, we've managed to get some funding from UNIDO, and these are things related to like trying to encourage organizations that are being more either energy efficient and environmentally friendly. So we've gotten some small funding when it comes to that, and there are different funding bodies that you can apply to if you're trying to get some money, and I'm sure we can talk about that later on. When it comes to the pandemic and the economic implications of that and on our business and how we dealt with it, we actually ended up learning a lot. So I would like to throw out some myths out the window, because I remember when the pandemic hit, right? There were all these articles all over saying that telcos are like their revenues have like jumped by like 40-50% because everybody is working from home, and you know, yes, in mature markets, yeah, I mean that was probably the case, but I'm talking about specifically for the Africell experience, because our core revenue doesn't come from like people having like monthly subscriptions, right? People pay as they go. So people buy bundles and pay as they go. So Gambia did get hit initially, and Gambia is a very small economy, and we did see a decline in revenues, and we went through a slight like cutting down of costs, cost cutting and what have you not. And what we did was two things happened actually in the COVID. We launched like a specific bundle, which we call the Stay Safe bundle, which was like a discounted bundle, like 50% off. So that, but it actually had a knock-on effect, because eventually more people, because the COVID effect really, I would say economically, at least from our industry, it only lasted like, I would say like 6 months. Because if you look at some of the reports from the Ministry of Finance, if I'm not mistaken, the Gambian economy in 2020 contracted by only 1.5%. However, in 2021, it's projected to grow by 6.5%. So the effect of the pandemic, yes, there was definitely an effect, and we saw it, and it was probably from the midway point of 2020 going down to the end of 2020. So we implemented a few things that gave customers easier access to data, but then it was cheaper, and there was an elasticity effect where more people were able to come on board, and it was able to cancel out some of the dip we had in our revenues. And then by the last 2 months of the year, we saw revenues beginning to pick up. But one thing very interesting that Africell did, and this is specifically our experience, is when we wanted to come up and support the COVID, our support to the country, we decided to do something crazy, and we decided to give support to every healthcare worker in the country. That's something we did. We said, okay, you know what? We're going to give every healthcare worker in the country, we're going to give you an allowance for 3 months. Now, the way we decided to deliver this support was through our mobile money platform. And because at the time, you know, this was an ideal medium, because this encourages cashless transactions. People don't need to go out. So we decided to give this out through mobile money. It actually had a knock-off effect where it helped actually pick up our mobile money platform, and then eventually, okay, not everybody is using it, but then there was, in the long run, it helped us increase our traffic on the mobile money, and eventually some revenue there. So I would say, if I had to summarize it all for us, it was kind of all like internal initiatives that we did that helped us from costs, like cutting costs and coming up with innovative ideas to help us maybe eventually in the long haul generate more revenue. So it helped us.
Thank you, Hussein. Thank you, Raymond. We have 8 more minutes, and you know, to keep track of time. So I will. We have Malik and Pierre that want to say something. So we'll try to maybe keep it short, so we can have enough time to close. As I know, a couple of people might have other places to go to. Including myself, anyway. So we'll try to be punctual. But really, thank you. You know, thank everybody for at least, you know, staying on until this time. Because normally by the hour mark, I allow people to close if they have to be somewhere else. Just so we don't take too much of anyone's time. I will begin with Malik, and then we'll go with Pierre, because in the order that they raise their hands, and then we'll see what they need, and maybe we'll allow both of them to state their questions, and then we just sum up their questions and then close, right? I think that would probably be a good strategy to be able to finish on time. See? So
I'll make mine really
let Malik state his question, and then Pierre, and then we'll let Hussein answer, and then Raymond, and when you answer, just go ahead and close, and then we'll close up. We'll wrap up. If we want to come back for part 2, we can always schedule another date and come back for part 2 of the discussion, and maybe include more panelists as well. So yeah, so Malik, the floor is yours.
Okay. Sign. I hope you didn't think you were going to come on the show and leave without a tough question. So one is, I want you to explain to us, I don't know, this is my data. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sign cost. 5 megabits per second of data for $82. Why? Why is it so expensive? So that's one. Number 2, features and functionality. I know a lot of features and functionality are available from other telcos outside of Gambia. For example, Wi-Fi calling. So if I'm at home, I can still receive my calls through my Wi-Fi connection. I know Africell is able to enable this, but you won't enable it. Why not? Are there any plans of offering some sort of a home internet service through your LTE data services? So those are just 3 points that I think the cost of data, I think, is limiting a lot of people from doing a lot of things that I think would be good for the Gambia, the economy, and a lot of things. But between you and QCell, I mean, I just don't comprehend why is it that the damn thing is so expensive. So maybe you can just tell us something that we don't know. That way we can all say, okay, we understand why it's so expensive. So if you can just give us some elaboration on that, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, Malik, the first question you mentioned the cost. I can touch on that, but you mentioned the second question was what features and functionalities. The line was breaking, so I didn't hear that.
So for example, on your iPhone, some telcos, well, most telcos will allow you to enable Wi-Fi calling. So which means I can travel to the US or wherever I have Wi-Fi, and I can receive my calls from the US or from Spain or from wherever. But I cannot do that with my Africell, because when you go in there, it's disabled. And I heard that this was a feature that Africell could enable, but they decide not to, because if people leverage that, then that means they won't be using their minutes. So it's a strategy, I understand, for profitability, but we also have pockets that we need to save our money. Because technology is evolving. Why aren't you enabling these technologies out there so you have more people using the platform?
Okay, great. Okay, Malik, this wouldn't be the first time you bring such a question, and I've actually seen you comment on Twitter and about some of these things, and of course it's a very valid question, and I'll try to answer it. We have come a long way, it's true. And I look at my experience in the Gambia, and I mean, being born and raised here, I've actually seen where we've come from. I remember in the late 90s, well, actually mid 90s, when we first had email, and it was a huge thing, and then it was wow, and there was no internet, and then then eventually when there was finally internet, you want to download an MP3, a 3 megabyte MP3 file. I remember it used to take me like half a week to download a song, and I used to get so excited when I download a song. It was crazy, and then eventually to where we are now, that we are at least able to offer speeds that are leaps and bounds ahead of where we were 10, 15 years ago. So it's a multifaceted answer to your question. I mean, first of all, Malik, you've recently come back, you've come back to the Gambia and you're doing great initiatives, but you also see how difficult it is to get certain things done. First of all, I don't need to really mention the obvious things, and I already mentioned some of them. The cost of electricity alone in the Gambia is one of the most expensive in the world. I don't know if you know that. You must know that. It's crazy expensive. And then the cost of fuel as well is crazy expensive. The cost of roads, there are no roads. Okay, fine. Maybe here in this part of the country, yeah, you can fairly have access to most places, but even roads, yes, I mean, there's very few like tarred roads. Tarred roads are not everywhere. So these three things are initially the most prohibitive factor in driving down the price. But then again, people will jump to, but look at just Senegal around the corner. How come data is cheaper than Gambia? So Senegal, when it comes to their state right now, they're actually way ahead of us in so many ways. And one of it is that Gambia only recently have our own submarine cable, which is the ACE, and this is one single cable is what is taking the whole country. You've all been there when the ACE cable cuts, and then the whole country is like hijacked for like 12 hours, and none of us have got data. I don't even believe that this thing happens in the 21st century. But Gambia only has one cable. When this cable goes down, we're at the mercy of Senegal. So we have to go and practically beg Solatel and these other bigger operators there to give us bandwidth at prohibitively crazy costs, and so it's an issue of it's a combination of all of these things, right? We have one source for our internet, which obviously makes it more expensive. We have high electricity costs. The infrastructure is still at an early stage. It needs to go. It needs to develop further. So all of these things make it's easy for you to say, yes, I would like to pay what I pay in the US for my bundles, but you can't really compare the two things, because in the US, fuel and electricity are way cheaper than they are in Gambia, and you've got like a billion cable systems running into the United States. When one breaks, you have another one. So yes, it's not easy, but you can see that there is progress in where we're going, and government has actually been recently supportive in allowing us to explore like other cable systems that we can connect to the one we have now that will eventually help us drive down the cost. And also, as some of us start going more sustainable and not depending on the power grid and not depending on generators, maybe down the line you can actually see some of these costs go down. But I think it's just it's a matter of time, and you have to also give telcos a little bit credit for what we have to deal with in making our businesses run. It really isn't easy, right? For the features and the functionality, very valid question. Yes, Africell, we are innovative and we like to do everything. We would like to be the first in doing things, but also within the limits that we have. Those of you that are here know that voice termination has been a sensitive topic since the time of the previous government. And actually, the voice was a monopolized market. Like no one was allowed to terminate their own voice traffic. And I'm talking about international voice. So even during the time of Jammeh, like if anybody gets caught, like even running a PABX from their office and doing like legitimate calls, you get locked up. But like thankfully, like government has realized that the only way to move forward is to liberalize some of these things. And it was only 2 years ago that government actually liberalized voice. However, liberalized to an extent that it's controlled. So nobody is allowed to terminate voice traffic outside a specific pipe that is going through the ACE landing station. So some of these things, I think down the line, as we get more comfortable in this new dispensation and as things are allowed to flow more freely, eventually they will come. But a lot of the times, it's not purely the telcos making being the reason for these things being the way they are. I'm not sure if that answers some of your questions.
Thank you, Hussein. I think you touched on, you touched heavily on, on the subject matter. Without further ado, I know Raymond has somewhere to be. So Raymond, I will just go ahead and let you close, and then, that way, at least you can be where you need to be. I think we only had one more question from Pierre anyway. I'll wait around and then see what Pierre is asking, and then after that we'll close everything. And in case you need to leave as well, you know, you can also do your closing after Raymond. But yeah, so that way we don't keep anyone later than they were expecting.
Of course,
and,
of course. And Sering,
yeah.
thank you for that. Thank you for being aware. And Pierre and I, we chat on WhatsApp all the time, so I'm sure we could answer his question offline. Look, this has been great. For somebody who has never done work in Gambia, hearing from Hussein and hearing from your guests over the past few weeks has been very helpful. So thank you for putting this forum together. You have my support, and I hope that we continue to grow and get this community bigger and bigger. For the audience, look, I appreciate you guys giving me the time. And Mukhtar Jallo, I'm grateful that I've been able to help you incrementally, you know, get to the next step with your Jollof Services business. My email is in the chat. I respond to email. Please send me notes, questions, or comments that you need. I'll do my best to answer them. I think in closing, I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing in Gambia. The fact that we're talking about strategy, the fact that we're talking about building what I call real businesses, right? Businesses that are going to scale and make a difference in the region. I am very encouraged by that. And, you know, it's something that I want to come back and participate in. My fiance and I are looking at Gambia as a spot for us to use all the things that we've learned out here in the West to come help move the country forward. I mean, specific to me, the vision I have, tying back to today's organization, is to enable the next generation to improve their skills and prepare for a career in this global technology company. That is the vision I have. It's a one-sentence thing that, you know, I've talked to all of you about, and I think strategically what that means for us is we need to be there and enable and teach and coach and remove barriers for these youth that want to get into this very lucrative technology field. So one of the specific goals that we have, which is, I'm going to leave you with this. We are going to have 100 trained and qualified software engineers that are born, raised, and based in the Gambia in the next 36 months. That is something that we have as a very, very specific goal. It's a SMART goal. It's very specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's relevant, and we have a time next to it. And the goal is we are going to put all our effort in making sure that we can start that this army of engineers, and hopefully in the next 3 years or so, make a difference in the region. So thank you so much, guys, for giving me the attention. Thank you so much. And yeah, hope to see you in the next one.
Thank you very much. King Ray. Happy to have you, man. And see you. Thank you very much. Good luck. See ya. All right, Sign. They've left you alone to man the castle.
I only have a few more minutes as well.
Yeah, so if you want to just share, you know, anything before you close, yeah, then floor is yours.
Again, I can't tell you how wonderful this has been as an experience. Sering, thanks a lot for putting this together. And actually, Raymond said it all. I actually am very optimistic for the future of the Gambia. I've seen it with my own eyes unravel in front of me. I've actually seen where we were and where we are today. And what Raymond said, just the fact that we're sitting here and talking about strategy tells you that, you know, we are transitioning from running shops to running companies. The country is changing, and Gambia needs its diasporans to come back, and we need people like the Maliks and, you know, the Dr. Ismail Abajis, and that are coming back and setting up and being like beautiful examples of what it is, what the sons and daughters of this country can do. So the future is extremely bright. We have lots of young, bright people here that are going to contribute to the change that this country is going to experience. I think forums like these should definitely be conducted more often. And I'm more than willing to. My doors are always open. I could be busy sometimes, but I'm more than willing, maybe through Sering after this, to answer any more questions that anybody else might have, or things that we didn't touch on. And I want to thank everybody or everybody that listened to us. And again, yes, thank you so much. And I believe that we have a bright future ahead of us, everyone. And this is our Gambia. So no one is gonna build it except us. So we need to see more of these initiatives come to light. So thank you so much, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Hussein. Thank you. Appreciate it. And thanks for coming out and hanging out with us. I believe
Hey,
before I
Hussein,
close,
and I just like coming on this. I mean, you have no idea like how big this is, as because people like other MDs or other leaders of organizations may think, you know, this is a small platform, but just your presence alone on this, I mean, I just had chills, man, in my body, just because how powerful it is. So thank you. And Sign, you've been the person that always, you know, welcomes people to come into your doors from the beginning to now. Look at where you are, and you still behave the same way. I think one of the things that we lack in this country is humility, and leaders like you that have that humility to understand the small person trying to get up there and showing up here and just giving your input and still sitting there, you know, humble as. Dude, thanks. You're awesome, man. Thank you. We appreciate you.
Malik, thank you. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. And I will not take it all as just a compliment of me being selfless. But again, it all goes to what I believe. And I keep telling you this every time I sit with you, is that people like you are the people that are going to take this country to the next level. So if more Gambians come back home and set up shop, you know, in light of all the difficulties, I know of all the challenges that you've been facing. And if people like you are supported by people like us to encourage you to stay and continue what you're doing, you know, because you bring another facet to the equation that I don't have the outside experience that you have. So it is in my interest that people like you stay, and it is in the interest of Gambia that people like you stay. So we need to work hand in hand together to make sure we achieve the dream, and that is the dream of dragging Gambia kicking and screaming into the 21st century. So thank you, Malik. It means a lot. It means a lot.
Absolutely. Thanks.
thank you. Pierre, did you have one thing to add before we go ahead and just end it? Because I think your hand was up, but I'm very sorry. You know, we ran over time.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I think, you know, for the respect of time, and I know Sign has to probably leave. Maybe we can probably do it through email. It's fine. Yeah, I just want to respect people's time.
Sure, and you know, always remember, we'll try to get Sign back again anyway. So don't worry. We'll let him pick the topic of his choice. You know, and whoever he wants to be with him on the panel.
Yeah,
we'll have another one, that's for sure.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Indeed, it'll be good. It'll be good. I really enjoyed it. You know, I mean, you know, like I said, every day you learn something new, and I got to learn a couple of new things today. I mean, so I really appreciate that. Thank you both for coming and sharing, and thanks to everybody that took the time out to also come in and chip in and chime in. And hope to see you. I mean, of course, every Saturday, same time, we are meeting. You know, so anytime you have time, doesn't matter. You can come in late, you can come in early, you can step in for 5 minutes or whatever time you have to spare. We'll appreciate any time we have, because it only adds to the conversation, and these are things that can help us all develop. And it should be getting better every day. You know, so thank you all again. And I hope to see you all soon. Cheers and
Cheers,
goodbye.
guys.
Thank you. All righty.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.